The research station floated in the cold emptiness of space, orbiting a dying star that glowed deep red like an old wound. Lieutenant Park Yuna stood at the observation window, watching the light dance across the metal walls. She was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life forms, and she had been stationed here for 2 years. Nothing exciting ever happened on Harmony's Edge, until today. The distress beacon had started screaming 3 hours ago. It came from a Vraxian warship drifting dead in space, about 4 hours away. When the signal reached the station, every alien on board went quiet. The Helix delegates stopped their clicking conversations. The Morthian ambassador turned pale blue, which meant fear. Even the human Marines checked their weapons twice. Everyone knew the Vraxians. They were the nightmare of the galaxy. Huge predators with scales black as midnight, claws that could tear through metal, and eyes that glowed in the dark. Their home planet was a death world where everything tried to kill everything else. The Vraxians had won that war. They had become the ultimate hunters, and then they had spread across the stars. They worked as killers for hire, as soldiers in wars that needed monsters. No species trusted them. No species wanted to. Captain Quan Taisek looked at his crew and asked for volunteers to check the ship. Nobody moved. The Helix ambassador said they should ignore the signal. The Morthian said they should blow up the ship from a safe distance. The human Marines said nothing, but their hands stayed on their guns. Yuna raised her hand. Everyone stared at her. She was small, even for a human woman, with short black hair and tired eyes. She had no combat training. She had no weapons. She had a degree in xenobiology and a habit of caring too much about creatures that scared other people. "I will go," she said simply. Captain Quan tried to stop her. He listed all the ways she could die. Vraxians were not like other predators. They did not kill for food or territory. They killed because they enjoyed it, because violence was written into their blood. Going alone into their ship was suicide. Yuna listened to everything he said. Then she put on her spacesuit and walked to the shuttle bay. The Vraxian warship was dark and cold. Emergency lights flickered red along the hallways, casting strange shadows on the walls. Yuna moved slowly, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. She found bodies first. Vraxian adults, frozen solid, their scales covered in ice crystals. They had died fighting something. The walls were marked with claw scratches and burn marks from weapons. Whatever had attacked this ship had been powerful. She counted 12 dead Vraxians before she found the cargo hold. The door was locked from inside. Yuna could hear something moving behind it. Something alive. She checked the ship's damaged computer and found a log entry. The ship had been attacked by pirates. The adults had fought to the last breath. Before dying, the captain had locked something precious in the cargo. Hold. Yuna opened the door. 3 pairs of glowing eyes stared at her from the darkness. They were Vraxian. Cubs. Children. The largest was about the size of a big dog, with scales that had not yet hardened to full black. The 2 smaller ones huddled behind it, shaking. They were surrounded by empty food containers. They had been trapped in this room for 3 weeks, eating emergency supplies, waiting for parents who would never come back. The largest cub made a sound deep in its throat. A warning. Yuna knew she should run. Every instinct told her run. This creature, even young, could kill her in seconds. Its claws were already sharp enough to cut bone. Its teeth were built for tearing flesh. Yuna did not run. She knelt down slowly, making herself smaller. She put her flashlight on the floor so it pointed at the ceiling, filling the room with soft light instead of harsh beams. Then she extended her hand, palm facing up, fingers relaxed. It was the same gesture humans used with scared dogs, with frightened children, with anything that needed to know it was safe. "Hello," she said softly. "You must be so scared." The largest cub lunged at her dot. It moved faster than she expected. One moment, it was across the room. The next, its jaws were inches from her throat. She could smell its breath, feel the heat of its body. Its eyes were locked on hers, burning with fear and rage and something else. Something desperate. Yuna did not move. She did not scream. She kept her hand extended and her voice calm. "I know," she whispered. "I know you are scared. I know you are hungry. I know you miss your parents." Her voice cracked slightly. "I am scared too, but I am not going to hurt you. I promise." The cub did not bite her. It stood there, frozen, its whole body trembling. Behind it, the two smaller cubs watched with wide eyes. Yuna reached into her pocket and pulled out a protein bar. Human food, but it was all she had. She unwrapped it slowly and held it out. The smallest cub moved first. It crept forward on shaking legs, sniffed the food, and then snatched it from her hand. It ate so fast it almost choked. The middle cub followed, and Yuna gave it another bar. Finally, the largest cub backed away from her throat. It watched her for a long moment, then lowered its head and accepted food from her palm. Yuna sat with them for 6 hours. She fed them everything she had. She talked to them in a soft voice, telling them about her home, her family, her life. She did not know if they understood her words, but they understood her tone. Slowly, one by one, they moved closer. The smallest one eventually fell asleep against her leg. The middle one curled up nearby. The largest one stayed awake, watching the door, protecting its siblings, protecting her. When the rescue team finally arrived, they found Yuna walking out of the cargo hold with 3 Raxian predators following at her heels like loyal dogs. The coalition wanted the cubs killed. They were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too alien. Yuna fought for them. She filed paperwork. She made calls. She begged and argued and refused to give up. Finally, she found an old human law that let her claim them as dependents, as children in need of protection. She named them Taiho, Bomi, and Dori. She took them home. The first month was a disaster. Yuna moved to a small colony on Kestrel 7, a forest moon far away from the busy centers of the galaxy. Her brother, Park Junho, helped her build a special home for the cubs. He was an engineer who had served in the military, a practical man who thought his sister had lost her mind. But family was family, and when Yuna asked for help, he came. The house they built was strong. Metal walls, reinforced doors, windows made of material that could stop bullets. Junho designed it like a fortress because he had seen what Raxian claws could do to normal buildings. He was right to be careful. Taiho destroyed the living room on the 3rd day. Nobody knew what triggered him. A loud noise from outside, maybe, or a bad dream. One moment, he was sleeping in the corner. The next moment, he was awake and screaming, his claws tearing through furniture like paper. He ripped apart the couch. He shattered the table. He put 3 deep scratches in the metal wall before Junho could seal himself in the bathroom. Yuna walked into the chaos without hesitation. She did not yell. She did not run. She sat down in the middle of the destroyed room and waited. Taiho circled her, growling, his eyes wild with something that looked like madness. But Yuna had seen this before. Not in aliens, but in human children. Children from war zones. Children who had lost everything. Children whose bodies remembered violence even when their minds tried to forget. "You are safe here," she said quietly. "You can break things. You can scream. But you are safe." Taiho raged for 2 more hours. Then, suddenly, he stopped. He collapsed on the floor next to Yuna, exhausted, and made a sound she had never heard before. It was almost like crying. Yuna put her hand on his head and sat with him until he fell asleep. Bomi was different. She did not rage. She disappeared. The middle cub found dark corners and small spaces where she could hide from the world. She refused to eat for days at a time. When Yuna approached her, she would press herself against the wall, making herself as small as possible, as if she wanted to vanish completely. Yuna remembered reading about this behavior in traumatized animals. Bomi was not aggressive because she had given up. She expected to die, and she was just waiting for it to happen. So Yuna changed her approach. She did not force Bomi to come out. Instead, she brought food to wherever Bomi was hiding and ate it herself, sitting nearby, not looking at the cub, not pressuring her. Day after day, meal after meal. Sometimes she talked about nothing important. Sometimes she just sat in comfortable silence. On the 14th day, Bomi crept out of her corner and ate from the same plate as Yuna. On the 20th day, she slept next to Yuna for the first time. On the 30th day, she made a soft sound when Yuna entered the room. It was almost like a greeting. Duri was the easiest and the hardest at the same time. The smallest cub was curious about everything. He wanted to explore every corner of the house, every tree in the forest, every machine in Junho's workshop. His enthusiasm was wonderful. His complete lack of fear was terrifying. In the first 3 months, Duri fell off the roof twice, got stuck in a drainage pipe once, nearly drowned in the river, and ate something poisonous that made him sick for a week. Each time, Yuna patched him up, explained what went wrong, and watched him run off to find new trouble. Junho thought the cub was stupid. Yuna disagreed. "He is not stupid," she told her brother one night while bandaging a cut on Dory's leg. "He is brave. He just does not know how to be careful yet." Nobody taught him. So she started teaching. Every day, she took Dory on walks through the forest. She showed him which plants were safe and which were dangerous. She taught him to check the depth of water before jumping in. She let him make small mistakes so he could learn from them, but she was always there to catch him before the mistakes became deadly. Duri learned fast. By the end of the year, he was still curious, still adventurous, but now he looked before he leaped. And when he explored, he always came back to tell Yuna what he had found, excited to share his discoveries with her. The galactic community watched all of this through news reports and surveillance footage. They expected the experiment to fail. They expected Yuna to die, or to give up, or to admit that Vraxians could not be changed. Every week, experts wrote articles explaining why this was impossible. Every month, officials came to evaluate the cubs and recommend termination. But the cubs kept growing, and they kept changing. By the end of the first year, Taiho had learned to control his anger. He still felt it, burning inside him like fire, but now he could choose what to do with it. He started guarding the house at night, not because he wanted to attack intruders, but because he wanted to protect his family. He had found a purpose for his strength. Bomi had transformed from a silent ghost into a curious learner. She loved puzzles and problems. Junho started giving her broken machines to figure out, and she would spend hours taking them apart and putting them back together. Her mind was sharp, sharper than anyone had expected from a species known for violence. Duri had become the bridge between the family and the outside world. He was the first to approach strangers without fear, the first to play with the children from the nearby village, the first to show the colonists that Vraxians could be gentle. When the 6-month evaluation team arrived, they found Taiho lying peacefully across Yuna's lap while she read reports on her computer. Bomi was helping Junho fix a generator, her claws surprisingly delicate with small parts. Duri was playing in the yard with a human child, chasing a ball back and forth, both of them laughing in their own ways. The team leader, a Morthian scientist who had recommended killing the cubs twice, stood in the doorway for a long time without speaking. Finally, she turned to her assistant and said, "Write this down. The human is not controlling them. She is parenting them." And somehow, impossibly, it is working. The report spread across the galaxy within hours. For the first time, people began to wonder if everything they knew about Raxians was wrong. And in a small house on a forest moon, Una read her 3 children a bedtime story about brave wolves who protected the weak, and pretended not to notice when Taiho quietly repeated the words along with her. The attack came without warning on a quiet morning in spring. Una was in the capital city of Kestrel 7, meeting with colonial administrators about expanding the integration program. Junho was at the house, working on a new translation device for Taiho. The 3 Vraxians were scattered across the property, doing their usual routines. Then the sky filled with ships. They were Vraxian warships, but they did not belong to any recognized faction. These were raiders, extremists, they called themselves. The True Blood, and they believed that Vraxians should rule the galaxy through fear and violence. For years, they had watched Yuna's experiment from the shadows. They had seen Taiho, Bomi, and Dory grow up gentle and kind. They had watched other species begin to lose their fear of Vraxians to the True Blood. This was the greatest insult possible. They came to take back what they considered stolen property. 3 young Vraxians who had been corrupted by human weakness. 3 traitors who needed to be reclaimed or destroyed. The first bombs hit the forest around the house. Trees exploded into flame. The ground shook. Emergency alarms screamed across the colony as people ran for shelter. Junho grabbed his communication device and called Una. "We are under attack. Military ships. They are heading for the house." Una's blood went cold. "The children. Where are the children?" Before Junho could answer, a massive shape burst through the door. It was Taiho, moving faster than Junho had ever seen him move. Behind him came Bomi and Dory, their scales raised in threat display, their eyes scanning for enemies. "Uncle," Taiho said through his translator, "stay inside. Lock the door. Do not come out." Then the 3 of them were gone, running toward the flames. Una tried to reach the house. She commandeered a transport vehicle and drove through the chaos. But the roads were blocked with debris and fleeing civilians. She watched through the windshield as Vraxian warships circled above her home. Like hungry birds, she had never felt so helpless, but she had also never seen what her children could really do. Taiho took command of the defense without hesitation. Years of training with Una had taught him how to control his power. Years of watching military shows with Junho had taught him tactics. He was no longer a scared cub. He was a warrior, and his family was in danger. He found the colonial defense forces scattered and confused. Their commander was dead, killed in the first strike. Their communications were jammed. They were outgunned and outnumbered. Taiho walked into their command center and started giving orders. At first, the soldiers were terrified. Here was a Vraxian, the very species attacking them, suddenly appearing and demanding they listen to him. Some raised their weapons. Some tried to run, but one young soldier recognized him. "Wait," she said. "That is Lieutenant Park's son, the one from the news reports." Taiho looked at the soldiers with calm, steady eyes. "My mother is in danger. Your families are in danger. We fight the same enemy today. Will you stand with me, or will you stand aside?" They stood with him, while Taiho organized the ground defense. Bomi went to work on the enemy ships. She found a communication relay station and broke into its systems. Her mind worked faster than any computer, finding weaknesses, creating chaos. She broadcast false orders to the True Blood fleet. She made their sensors show phantom targets. She turned their own technology against them. 2 ships collided in midair because their navigation systems told them they were in different locations. 3 more retreated after Bomi made them believe reinforcements were coming from the coalition fleet. She could not stop the attack alone, but she could make it much, much harder. Duri did what he did best. He ran. He ran faster than the fires spreading through the forest. He ran faster than the bombs falling from the sky. He went to every home, every shelter, every hiding place where civilians were trapped. He carried children on his back. He dragged injured people to safety. He led groups of survivors through paths he had memorized during years of exploration. A reporter's drone caught footage of him pulling a family of 4 from a burning building, then immediately sprinting back into the flames to look for more survivors. The video would later be watched over 2 billion times. The battle lasted 6 hours. When the true blood leader finally landed his ship and stepped onto the burning ground, he expected victory. His forces had destroyed half the colony. His enemies were beaten and scattered. All that remained was to claim his prizes. He found Taiho waiting for him. The leader was old and scarred, a veteran of countless battles. He had killed more creatures than he could remember. He looked at Taiho with disgust. "You are a shame to our species," the leader growled. "You have forgotten what we are. You have let these weak creatures make you soft." Taiho stood perfectly still. His scales were burned in several places. His left arm hung at an awkward angle, possibly broken. He had been fighting for hours without rest. He should have been exhausted, but his eyes were clear and calm. "I know exactly what I am," Taiho said through his translator. His voice was broadcast across every frequency, heard by every ship, every soldier, every survivor on the colony. "I am my mother's son." Then he moved. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds. When it was over, the true blood leader lay on the ground, alive but broken. His ships, seeing their commander defeated, surrendered or fled. The battle was over. But the image that changed the galaxy came later. Yuna finally reached the house 2 hours after the fighting stopped. The building was damaged but standing. The forest around it was black and burned. Emergency crews were everywhere, treating the wounded, counting the dead. She did not see any of that. She only saw 3 figures waiting for her at the edge of the property. Yuna ran. She ran faster than she had ever run in her life, her lungs burning, her legs screaming, tears streaming down her face. She did not care who was watching. She did not care about dignity or protocol or anything except reaching her children. Taiho, Bomi, and Duri ran toward her at the same time. They met in the middle of the burned field. 3 massive predators, the deadliest creatures in known space, surrounding one small human woman, and the small human woman wrapping her arms around as much of them as she could reach, holding them tight, sobbing with relief. "My babies," she kept saying. "My babies, my babies, my babies." Taiho, the warrior who had just defeated an army, pressed his huge head against her shoulder and made a sound like a whimper. Bomi, the genius who had outsmarted an entire fleet, curled around her mother like she was 5 months old again. Duri, the hero who had saved hundreds of lives, bounced on his feet and kept licking Yuna's face until she laughed through her tears. The footage spread across every news network in the galaxy. People who had feared Vraxians their entire lives watched these monsters cry with joy because their human mother was safe, and something in the galaxy shifted forever. 3 years passed, and the cubs were no longer cubs. Taiho stood 7 feet tall at the shoulder. His scales had hardened to a deep black color that seemed to swallow light. His claws could cut through starship metal without effort. When he walked, the ground trembled slightly under his weight. He was, by any measurement, one of the most dangerous creatures in the known galaxy. He still asked Yuna to check under his sleeping platform for monsters before bed. Bomi had developed silver markings along her scales, a sign of high intelligence in Vraxian biology. Scientists later learned that this pattern appeared in what Vraxians called the tactical caste, individuals whose minds worked faster than others. Bomi could solve problems that stumped computers. She could predict what enemies would do before they did it. Her brain was a weapon sharper than any claw. She used it mostly to cheat at board games against Jono. Duri had become the fastest of the three. His scales were emerald green, beautiful and bright, and he could cross a kilometer in seconds when he wanted to. He was smaller than his siblings, but his speed made him dangerous in a different way. Nothing could catch him. Nothing could escape him. He spent most of his time bringing Yuna interesting rocks he found in the forest. The galaxy could not understand this. They had centuries of data about Vraxians. The species was violent, cruel, incapable of forming bonds with other creatures. Every scientist, every expert, every historical record said the same thing. Vraxians were monsters, but here were 3 Vraxians who called a human woman mother. The first test came when a helix trade delegation visited Kestrel 7. The helix were an insect-like species with large compound eyes and delicate antennae. Millions of years ago, their ancestors had been prey for ancient Vraxians. Evolution had given them a defense mechanism. When they felt threatened, they released a chemical into the air that triggered panic in predators. It was supposed to make hunters run away. Nobody told them what would happen when they met Taiho in the marketplace. The moment the helix saw the massive Vraxian walking through the crowd, they panicked. Their bodies released the fear chemical automatically. The effect spread like wildfire. Humans felt their hearts race. Other aliens started screaming. The entire marketplace dissolved into chaos as people ran in every direction. Taiho froze. The chemical was affecting him too. Every cell in his body screamed at him to attack, to kill, to destroy the source of this threat. His claws extended. His muscles tensed. His eyes locked onto the helix delegation. In the old days, before Yuna, he would have killed them all. Instead, Taiho did something that no Vraxian had ever done. He sat down. He made himself as small as a 7-foot predator could be. He closed his eyes and focused on breathing, using the techniques Yuna had taught him for controlling his rage. And he waited. He waited for his mother. Yuna arrived 15 minutes later, pushing through the panicked crowd. She found her son sitting perfectly still in the middle of empty market stalls, surrounded by overturned carts and abandoned goods. The helix were hiding behind a wall of armed guards. Convinced they were about to die, Yuna walked up to Taiho and took his massive head in her hands. "I am so proud of you," she said. The helix ambassador watched this moment from behind her guards. She was old, even by her species' long standards, and she had seen many things in her life. She had seen wars. She had seen peace treaties fall apart. She had seen species rise and fall. But she had never seen anything like this. She had never seen a Vraxian choose gentleness. That night, the ambassador requested a private meeting with Yuna. They sat together in a small room at the colony's guest house. 2 very different beings trying to understand each other. "How did you do this?" the ambassador asked. "We have studied Vraxians for thousands of years. We have tried everything to make peace with them. Nothing worked. They only understand violence." Yuna thought about the question for a long time. "Maybe that is the problem," she finally said. "You studied them. You tried to change them. But did anyone ever just love them?" The ambassador did not understand. Love was not a scientific approach. Love could not be measured or tested. Love was something soft and fragile, useless against creatures built for killing. Yuna smiled sadly. "Humans have been monsters too," she said. "We have done terrible things to each other. Wars, slavery, cruelty that makes Vraxians look tame. But we changed. Not because someone forced us to. We changed because people kept believing we could be better. They kept loving us even when we did not deserve it." She looked out the window, toward the house where her 3 children were waiting. "The Vraxians are not different from us," she continued. "They are just people who never had the chance to be anything except weapons. Nobody ever showed them another way to live. Nobody ever told them they could be more than their claws and teeth." The ambassador was quiet for a long moment. "You truly believe this?" she asked. "I do not believe it," Una said. "I know it. I see it every day." Word of the marketplace incident spread quickly. Soon, representatives from other species were contacting Una. Could she help with their own dangerous predators? Could her methods work on other violent species? Was there hope for creatures everyone had given up on? The Galactic Coalition, seeing an opportunity, created a new department. They called it Xenosociological Integration, a fancy name for a simple idea. They wanted to try Una's approach on a larger scale. They asked her to lead it. Una did not want to be famous. She did not want to be a politician or a symbol. She just wanted to raise her children in peace. But she looked at the requests piling up on her desk. Hundreds of messages from scientists, from diplomats, from ordinary people who were afraid of the predators in their own neighborhoods. They were all asking the same question, "Is there another way?" Una thought about the cargo hold where she had found 3 scared, hungry children. She thought about what would have happened if she had walked away. That day, she accepted the position, and in a small house on Kestrel 7, 3 Vraxians celebrated by trying to bake their mother a cake. They failed horribly. The kitchen was destroyed. Junho almost cried, but Una ate every bite with a smile on her face. 10 years had passed since the day Una walked into a dark cargo hold and found 3 starving children. The galaxy had changed. The Vraxian integration program now operated on 17 different worlds. Hundreds of young Vraxians were growing up alongside other species, learning that their strength could protect instead of destroy. They went to schools where their classmates were Helix and Morthian and human. They played games where nobody was afraid of them. They had friends who did not flinch when they smiled. It was not perfect. Nothing ever was. Some planets refused to participate. Some species could not forget centuries of fear. There were setbacks and failures and moments when it seemed like everything would fall apart. But every year, more Vraxians chose a different path. And every year, fewer people saw them as monsters. Taiho had become the first Vraxian ambassador to the Galactic Coalition. His appointment was controversial. When he walked into the great chamber where representatives from every species gathered, half of them instinctively reached for emergency alarms. Here was a creature who could kill everyone in the room before they could blink. Here was a nightmare that had haunted their ancestors for generations. But Taiho simply bowed politely and took his seat. Over the following months, he attended every meeting. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, his words were careful and thoughtful. He remembered what his mother had taught him about patience, about understanding, about giving people time to see past their fear. Slowly, the flinching stopped. By the end of his first year, other ambassadors were having lunch with him. By the end of his second year, they were asking for his advice. The former weapon had become a diplomat, and he was very good at it. Some said it was because Vraxians were natural strategists. Others said it was because Taiho had learned to see the galaxy through human eyes. Taiho said it was because his mother had taught him that listening was more powerful than roaring. Bomi had founded an academy. She called it the Bridge School, a place where different species could learn to work together. Students came from every corner of the galaxy to study tactics, problem-solving, and cooperation. Bomi taught them that every species had unique abilities, and that combining those abilities could achieve things no single species could manage alone. Her classes were unconventional. She would put a Helix engineer, a human soldier, a Morthian scientist, and a young Vraxian in the same room and give them impossible problems to solve. At first, they would argue. They would fall back on old prejudices and fears. But Bomi would guide them, gently pushing them to see each other as partners, instead of threats. Her graduates went on to lead mixed species teams across the galaxy. They explored new worlds. They built new technologies. They proved that diversity was not a weakness, but a strength. When reporters asked Bomi about her teaching philosophy, she would smile and say, "I learned everything from my uncle Junho. He taught me that broken things can always be fixed, if you take the time to understand how they work." Junho had passed away 3 years ago. Bomi kept his toolbox in her office, and she touched it every morning before starting her day. Juri had become an explorer. He was the first Vraxian to join a human deep space survey team. They traveled to the edges of known space, mapping stars that no one had ever visited, discovering worlds that no one had ever seen. Duri was perfect for the job. His speed and reflexes made him invaluable in dangerous situations. His endless curiosity drove him to investigate every mystery they encountered. But the real reason he loved exploration was simpler. Every night, no matter how far he traveled, Duri sent messages home. He described the strange creatures he had seen. He attached pictures of beautiful nebulae and ancient alien ruins. He asked about his mother's health, his brother's work, his sister's student's dot, and at the end of every message, he wrote the same words: "I wish you could see this with me. I will bring you something beautiful when I come home." Yuna saved every single message. She was old now. Her hair had turned gray. Her movements were slower than they used to be. She spent most of her days on the porch of her house on Kestrel 7, watching the forest that had regrown after the fires of the True Blood attack. Young Vraxians visited her constantly. They came from all over the galaxy, sometimes traveling for weeks, just to spend an afternoon in her presence. They brought their human and Helix and Morthian friends. They brought their children, tiny cubs who had never known a world where Vraxians were feared. Yuna welcomed all of them. She listened to their stories. She gave them advice. She held the little ones on her lap and told them the same fairy tales she had told Taiho, Bomi, and Dori when they were small. One day, a reporter from the Coalition's Central News Network came to interview her. The reporter was young and nervous, clearly uncomfortable being so close to a woman who had spent her life surrounded by predators. "What do you think your legacy will be?" the reporter asked. Yuna laughed softly. "Legacy? I did not do anything special. I just looked at some scared, hungry children and saw scared, hungry children. The rest of the galaxy saw monsters." She paused, watching a group of young Vraxians play with human and Helix children in the yard. They were chasing each other through the trees, laughing and growling and making sounds of pure joy. "Humans have always been good at this," Yuna continued. "We look at things that scare us and we ask ourselves, what if we are wrong? What if this creature that everyone calls a monster is just a person who nobody loved enough?" The reporter asked one final question. "What would you want the galaxy to remember?" Taiho's voice echoed from inside the house, calling her for dinner. Bomi was arriving tomorrow with a group of students. Duri had sent a new star chart that morning, marking a world he wanted to show her someday. Yuna smiled, her eyes full of warmth. "Remember that fear is a choice," she said. "And so is family." That night, she ate dinner with Taiho. They talked about his work at the Coalition, about the new proposals he was drafting, about the politicians who still did not trust him. They talked about Junho and about the early days when everything seemed impossible. "Mother," Taiho said quietly, "do you ever regret it? Taking us in?" Yuna reached across the table and took his massive claw in her small human hand. "Never," she said. "Not for a single moment. You are my children. You were always my children. From the moment I saw you in that cargo hold." Taiho made that sound he had made since he was a cub. the one that was almost like crying. "I do not know what we would have become without you," he said. Yuna squeezed his claw gently. "You would have become exactly what you are," she said. "Strong and brave and good. You always had it in you. I just helped you see it." Outside, the stars shone bright over the forest of Kestrel 7. Somewhere out there, Dory was discovering new worlds. Somewhere out there, Bomi students were learning to build bridges between species. Somewhere out there, young Vraxians were growing up knowing they could be more than weapons, and in a small house on a quiet moon, a human mother and her Vraxian son finished their dinner, washed the dishes together, and said goodnight, just like any other family.